Hello and welcome to Working Simply, my way of sharing the art and pleasure of embroidery. This video shows how to make my 3D beaded motifs, which I like to make as separate slips to be appliqued and finished on the work itself. I show the entire process. Here's a requirements list. Most embroiderers probably have everything mentioned here already. Now to the fun part. This is a fairly heavy beading wire, easily cut with a pair of pliers into 2.5 inch or 7 centimetre lengths. Note I have my equipment set up ready to begin stitching. Form the cut wire into a circle. A pair of tweezers makes this a lot easier. Ensure that the cut edges meet as closely as possible. Place it onto the felt and cut around the wire, leaving a generous amount of felt. Thread a large sharp needle with a thick pearl thread that matches with your bead colours. Tie a knot at the end. Yes, I'm a knot girl. Then take a couple of extra stitches on the back of the ring, just inside the ring itself. That's simply to make sure that the thread is well and truly secured. Bring the needle through to the front, just under the outer edge of the ring. Begin by working a simple blanket stitch to secure the wire to the felt, ensuring close coverage around the entire ring. I tend to use a very long thread because I don't want to keep stopping and starting. So that's why you see such a long thread used there. And it's best just to pick up a little bit of the felt. It doesn't have to go right through to the back because that's a thick needle. And after a few stitches, I like to trim the felt a little more evenly so that the thread doesn't catch on some of those jagged edges. Just take your time. This is a relaxing process. I just wanted to show you how I stitch across that join. Just keep stitching. Now I'm coming up to the join, the beginning and the end of the wire. You simply keep stitching. All of this pearl thread will be completely covered with beads. You won't see it. It's there just to form a base for the beading needle to be able to attach the beads. There we go, straight across. Now you have a completely stitched ring. And as I said before, the purpose of that stitching is to create a base. Now take your beading needle and thread it with Nemo thread. Nemo thread is a strong beading thread made up of long, thin strands of nylon fibres. They come in a variety of colours and sizes and are easily sourced online. I use a knot here too, and a couple of extra stitches on the back inside that ring. Bring your needle up to the front, ensuring as you do that you catch some of that pearl thread. I like to begin working the larger bead elements first. So go around your ring, attaching your larger beaded elements. You may have 2 or 3 different sorts of larger beads. That's fine, but I find just eyeball it. Don't worry too much, but try and space it evenly according to your eye. And it's a good idea with some of these larger beaded elements to go through them at least twice because they're quite heavy and they need that added security. I've decided here to use some very simple little plastic bugle beads, and this is interesting because the bugle bead will stand upright. I'm using a small bead here at the end, which will act as what's called a stop bead. And by going back through the bugle bead only, the stop bead secures the bugle bead and it'll stand upright like a little pink soldier. There we go. Continue around, just placing them evenly according to your eye. Once this is done, I simply fill in the gaps using my medium and small sized beads, always catching some of that pearl thread embroidered over the wire. I make sure that the inside and outside edges of the ring are completely covered. So that's where my small beads tend to come in to play. And this is a good time to talk about using a variety of sizes and shapes and tones in your bead selection. Add some pizzazz by using some showstopper or standout beads. And try to run the thread through your fingers, front and back, to avoid snarls and knots. Just enjoy the process of creating. I like to finish with 3 or 4 stitches, and now I've moved on to working the bugle beads in the centre. It's the same process as the small pink bugle bead earlier. You run your needle up through the main bugle bead, you attach a stop bead, and then you run the thread back down through the bugle bead only. And because this is a fairly large bead, I'm going to be running the thread through twice, through both the bugle bead and the stop bead, and then simply back through the bugle bead. I also like to take a little stitch after I've done this, just somewhere on the white felt, just to make sure that that's all nicely secured. And I like to use larger sized bugle beads for this. Normal sized bugle beads you really won't see over the dimension of the outside ring. Well, it's up to you, but I like to use larger or longer bugle beads. Just fit them snugly to the inside of the beaded ring, and so that they fit snugly with each other as well. Fill the entire centre. This is just showing how those beads stand up so beautifully. And here's my finished slip, ready to be appliqued or beaded onto my work. Just trim the felt to approximately 1/8 of an inch around. As you can see, there's not much showing there. I did use a small amount of glue on the back of the slip just to keep it in place, and then I began to bead around the little motif with similar beads to those that I used on the ring itself. And by using the same beads, I've unified the little slip so that no one would know it was worked separately. Why do I do this? 2 reasons. This felt that I'm working on now is handmade art felt, and as a result threads tend to pick up some of the fuzzy wool. And the second is that it's a lot easier to stitch without having all those other dimensional pieces that are already attached to my work getting in the way. Here's another finished beaded motif properly secured to my work. You can't tell at all that that's been worked separately. I hope you've enjoyed this short tutorial. Just get some things together and get creating. Good luck. I use takeaway sauce containers to store my collection of bits and bobs when it comes to beading.